sweet dreams.
Or better yet, sweet memes. Didn't like the brooding, neutered Dante from Devil May Cry 2? You and I can both rest assured that this prequel to the OG Devil May Cry recaptures Dante's original personality and then some.
Sorry, not open for business yet.
Maybe not, but once he decides to get the party started, he's getting shanked by ghouls only to turn this assault against them by beating them mercilessly with the blade sticking out of his mutilated body. This poor soul is like, "Please, sir, I stabbed you." To which Dante treats him to a surfing lesson. This kind of over-the-top, action-packed absurdity is the norm in Devil May Cry 3, and it's a welcome return to form for our protagonist.
I love this. This is what I live for!
On the opposite end, we have our antagonists, or in other words, the bosses. Devil May Cry 2 took the approach of adding in hordes of uninspired designs that would have been better left on the cutting room floor. Do the bosses follow Dante's lead in a resurgence of quality, or do we have another handful of horse crap from hell? Without further ado, here are the Devil May Cry 3 bosses ranked from worst to best.
This party's getting crazy. Let's rock.
Number 13, Arco. What is this bloated jellyfish bullshit? He has barely any worthwhile attacks. He flails around a bit, swinging his tentacles and barfing while you use him like a punching bag. Then he has a bunch of explosive slugs come out and feast on you. That's the real danger, being overwhelmed by his massive amount of minions. The actual fight with Arkham himself is underwhelming because he only has 3 attacks and none of them are hard to dodge at all. The only challenge here is surviving the swarm with enough HP to continue taking on the blob. Let's give some context on Arkham. Throughout the first half of the game, he's the right-hand man to Virgil. It's extremely obvious the whole time that he has his own motivations, but so does Virgil, so his betrayal isn't that much of a shock. Even so, Virgil doesn't secure the kill, and Dante is too careless to finish the job. He further manipulates his gullible daughter, Lady, who he wronged through the minor act of sacrificing her mother to demons to gain the power of a god. Yeah, this guy's a bit of a loon, but through his manipulation, he manages to get what he wants. It just turns out that he is a terrible vessel for the power of Sparta. It's a fitting punishment for his greed to reward him with the battle prowess of a mashed potato. Taking vengeance for his manipulations and crimes isn't a one-man effort. For the second half of the battle, you tag team with Virgil at the cost of Devil Trigger, a fair enough exchange considering it makes the battle even easier. Taken as a whole, I think the point of this fight is somewhat similar to True King Alot from Demon's Souls. He's meant to be an example of how lust for power to the point of committing crimes will rarely be rewarded in the end, and beating him down is somewhat satisfying due to all the emotion going into it, especially with Virgil getting to join you. But mechanically, this fight is too simplistic as a one-on-one battle. The battle of mini Arkhams is irritating at best and awful at worst, and the challenge being primarily outlasting the onslaught of slugs with not so interesting design is a huge letdown for one of the game's final bosses. At least Lady is able to help us out by getting revenge for herself and vicariously punishing Arkham for his moderate level of mediocrity.
Goodbye, Father.
No!
Number 12, Hell Vanguard. The first boss of the game is more of a warm-up for what's to come than anything else. Frankly, other than Arkham, who I would say is the only true mediocre fight in the game, I think Hell Vanguard hits that average line nicely. He comes in the first mission after a gauntlet of enemies, meaning his difficulty will largely be based on how well you handled those foes. Even then, you're given a vital star at the beginning of the mission, so you can go in with full health easily if you so choose. The fight itself is appropriately basic for what is effectively a tutorial boss. He'll do basic swings, teleport around after letting you get some offense in, and does a drive-by swinging attack every now and again. I found that the easiest way to handle him is wait for the swing, then you can easily jump over his head and smack that booty. Alternatively, you could roll to your right and attack his side. Due to his limited moveset, he is predictable, but if you let him land hits on you, you'll be in for a world of hurt. After playing Devil May Cry 2 and mashing the win button, that is Devil Trigger and guns, it was great to see that you were forced to dodge assaults and get melee offense in short windows to make this battle end efficiently. Hell Vanguard is nothing special, especially considering how often he shows up as a standard enemy throughout the game, but he stands up well as an introductory boss to whet the appetite for what's to come. Number 11, Doppelganger. In the same vein as Hell Vanguard, Doppelganger is a pretty straightforward fight. It's more advanced than jumping behind and booty smacking, but not by a lot. Doppelganger feels more like an environmental fight than a duel. You almost spend your entire time smacking the exterior of the arena to uncover lights. Illuminating Doppelganger makes him vulnerable to damage for a brief time if he's close enough when you open a shutter, and once you open them all, you get a surprisingly large amount of time to lay down offense. Sadly though, that's it. You keep rotating around, opening shutters, and beating Doppelganger down. He will will resist by chasing you to attack, but you can use that to your advantage by stunning him and hitting him at the right moment with the lights. If you get into a rhythm, he can barely do anything at all. I imagine on higher difficulties it would take more damage to open the shutters and he would be more aggressive, but even so, it's just not all that fun racing to attack a wall. I will give some credit for mixing things up though, and at least they did give Doppelganger a move to close the lights at the cost of a long windup. The thought here isn't bad, it's just not the most exciting fight and pales in comparison to some of the peers to come. Number 10, Heart of the Leviathan. Fighting the Heart mixes together a few different styles of boss design. First, you have the trope of weakening a part to expose its true weak point. Then you have environmental attacks to trouble you while you try to damage the aforementioned parts. Finally, you have basic enemies thrown in to keep you on your toes in a fight that would otherwise be too passive. Fortunately for you, these enemies provide an easy double trigger farm. The two sides you can damage both connect with the center to provide different attacks, one being a sweeping laser and the other being homing electric balls. The real opportunity to attack comes in once you deplete one of the health bars on the side, and the middle part will expose a green core that takes proper damage. I love that this fight leaves you the opportunity for strategy in damaging both of the side parts to almost no health, allowing you to get double the effective hits in on the center if you attack them pretty close together. With all this in mind, this fight boils down to how long you can endure against the basic foes and periodic attacks from the heart. It's not too difficult or complex, but it does ask a certain level of dodging capability and crowd management from the player that keeps things a little bit interesting. Just as with Doppelganger, it's not necessarily a bad boss, just nothing to cry home about when compared to the remainder of our list. Number 9, Gigafeed. Welcome to platforming the boss. If you aren't good at timing jumps and managing the camera, this fight can be a nightmare. The central mechanic to this boss is navigating the different levels of the arena and anticipating what hole Gigafeed will venture out of so you can leap on top of him. The problem is that with how early this fight is in the game, you may not have air hike. I faced him twice in the game, the mandatory fight in Mission 4 and the optional battle toward the end of the game. In the first fight without air hike, I found my jumps came up short more often than not, leading to a drawn out battle with both Gigafeed and more so the camera changing angles on a dime. The second fight, however, I had air hike and it was so much easier to mount the beast. This made the encounter loads more fun. It also made me notice how trivially easy it is when you can mount him quickly. He has a few attacks that will assault you on the ground or in the air, plus he can do spins to get you off of him, but it's mostly in vain. That is, unless you struggle to get on top of him enough that those attacks wear you down over time. With my complaints in mind, I would say that my reliance on air hike is based more on getting used to its open availability in Devil May Cry 2. The arena is well designed and allows you every opportunity to get on top of the beast. But still, it caused me enough frustration to put him lower on the list, and I think he deserves a knock for how easy he is once you can consistently get on top of him, even if it is pretty fun slicing him down. Number 8, Jester. Jester delivers a competent battle where Arkham failed to. This Joker ripoff has a twisted humor about him and an unsettling power that makes taking him on an intriguing proposition. Fortunately, the fight mostly delivers, though it does have a basic flow to it. To start, you'll shoot him and he'll comically dodge, then teleport. At this time, your bullets will finally connect, which is your signal to close the distance and lay on the abuse. After having enough of that, he'll move to the center while invulnerable and summon a bunch of bouncing balls while screaming about butts. At least I think he said butts. Well, we do like to smack dead booty. Over the course of the fight, the cycles remain the same, but the balls will come at you faster and in more frenzied patterns. This is one of those boss battles that has a straightforward outline to it, but it's one that's satisfying to partake in, earning my marks as the first above-average boss in the game. Number 7, Lady. With Dante having awkward romances throughout the history of Devil May Cry,
I'm beginning to think I've got rotten luck with women.
Yeah, buddy, that's an understatement. Lady is a character I fully expected to dislike, but I'm happy to say that her arc throughout the game is a worthwhile one, and her connection to Arkham is a driving factor that pushes Dante to understand his own familial conflict. And I certainly admire a woman who is willing to tango with the son of Sparta for the right to be the one to put Arkham down. It's a respectable motivation, which gives you a great setup for the fight. Of course, one locked and loaded babe likely isn't enough to take Dante down. What's brilliant is that the fight, and in turn Lady, are fully aware of this. She spends the entirety of the fight running away to various degrees. In the beginning, she's more bold and tries to fire her rocket launcher at you while stationary. Later, she'll throw grenades around while leaping wildly. Then in the final stretch, she becomes a stealth master and starts firing homing missiles at you. I commend all this from a story perspective. It's something far different than we've ever had before in the franchise, so it feels refreshing, but the one problem I have is how tedious it can be to track her down in the later stretch. It reminds me of the Migalash chase in Bloodborne, except when you do finally corner her, she has incredible jukes and just keeps running away. At the same time, that's the way the fight is designed, and forcing you to capitalize on hitting her during her rocket windups and whittle her down over time is clever. It's just not the most fun in a game that is centered around landing and holding stylish combos. Nonetheless, I applaud the developers for trying something different and finding a way for Lady to put up a reasonable fight while making it rewarding, even if tracking her down can be slightly grating at times. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the real reward. Hell yeah! I've been waiting to rock this bad boy ever since I went missile surfing when we met. I did say this game was over the top, didn't I? Number 6, Beowulf. With respect to Lady and all the bosses that came before her, with the exception of her dogshit daddy, Beowulf is a dramatic step up in quality. The biggest reason for this is the larger move pool. All told, I believe Beowulf has around 10 different attacks that he can dole out, and they're mixed in slowly over the course of taking his health bar down. At first, he only does simple melee combos that are easy to jump over and punish, but pretty quickly into beating on him, he starts unleashing his real arsenal of attacks, including Light Blast AoEs, summoning pillars and kicking them at you, charging at you at blistering speed on all fours, and firing feathers at you from a distance. All these attacks add great variety, offer something to worry about from all ranges, and are all balanced well, perhaps excluding the feather shot attack. That move is ridiculously hard to dodge, at least for me. I can handle part of it, but always seem to get hit by at least some of the feathers, and that attack really hurts. The final bit of his health bar has him unleashing all of his attacks in a furied hurry that can be difficult to overcome, but it still plays out decently. If there are any slights on Beowulf outside of the feather attack, I'd say that the first portion of melee only is too formulaic and easy as a result, and the final stretch is a bit too frenzied. I kinda wish that instead of using different attacks during different phases, that he used his entire arsenal from the beginning and instead just got faster over time. But as it stands, Beowulf is still a great fight and well deserving of a spot just outside the top 5. Number 5, Chariot. Executioner's Chariot starts as a range battle on the bridge. Jump over the carriage with proper timing and keep unloading. You stun it eventually for an opportunity at melee damage, but I almost always found myself to be too far away to take advantage. After shaving off a decent amount of health, you get to tango with it in the arena below. Now it circles around firing missiles in a rhythm that are easy to dodge, though they do require disciplined timing for you to fire shots in between. Eventually it comes to the middle and then you get to unload with melee and DT. Later in the battle it unleashes a final line of defense in the form of time orbs. If you touch any of these, you'll be temporarily slowed to a snail's pace, while the boss can still pop off at the standard pace. These are balanced pretty well by being able to slow down the boss in the same way, and dealing with these orbs, the missiles, and any melee charges brings an intensity to this fight that doesn't let up until it ends. Even if it is on the easy side, the rhythm of this fight makes it one of the most thrilling and enjoyable in the game. Number 4, Cerberus.
Leave now, mortal. The likes of you are forbidden in this land.
What an honorable boy. Unfortunately, this oversized pupper doesn't know what he's in for.
Easy, Fido. I'm gonna take you for a walk. Come on, puppy. Let's go.
Fortunately for us, we're in for a great boss battle. Similar to Beowulf, Cerberus has a number of attacks that he can unleash. What adds an amazing wrinkle to it is that what he'll use for offense depends on which of his 3 heads are currently in the middle. Based on the color of the eyes that corresponds with each head, you'll get a number of different ice attacks that have to be dodged in different ways. Beyond that, he has plenty of other melee swipes and charges. The interesting trick is that it seems like this is a fight you would want to handle up close and personal, but it's best to balance it by falling back after getting some damage so you can effectively avoid Cerberus's bigger moves. There are 5 points to damage, the 3 heads and the 2 legs. Each are encased in a layer of ice that is best shaken using your guns. After that, you can plug away at his health with melee. The best way to go about it is to knock him down by harming the legs. This gives you a large window of him stunned that can result in you slaying multiple heads at once. Once you've slain them all, you claim victory, but it's no easy task. Everything is balanced well, and I love how the fight plays a balance between shattering the ice, quickly getting offense in, and then backing off to ensure you can safely dodge his large attacks. The only downside is that I found it to be viable to ignore all of that and just knock him down quickly and spam his heads with melee in just the right way so you're hitting all of them at the same time. This led to me downing him on my second attempt with ease that had me scratching my head at how quickly it happened. Even so, it's still a well-designed fight mechanically and asks a lot of the player in a fair way that is very enjoyable, even if it can be trivialized with the right strategies. Number 3, Agni and Rudra. Fire and ice, baby. This is what I've been waiting for since I saw you could change weapons on the fly. The moment I saw their 2 colors, I knew what time it was. This battle requires you to bait attacks out of them to get brief offensive windows, then evade quickly after getting your damage in. Of course, you also have to balance between both of them being all over you. Not gonna lie, the camera is a little rough here. The lock-on helps, but since using it can control some of your moves, you have to balance between using it and free aiming the camera. You also have to balance between them and the differing attacks they both have. Eventually, they combine and then things get really tough. I had a feeling something like that might happen though, so I made sure to have their health low equally. Glad I did, because I got fisted hard the moments the swords Darth mauled. Luckily, I was able to get in a clutch moment at the end and survive. What I love about this fight is how precise of timing it requires for both offense and defense, and the margin of error being even more strict due to the 2-on-1 nature of the battle. It requires you to be much more careful in every move you make, particularly when you consider how early in the game this fight takes place. You're forced to get good, and this fight was such a breath of fresh air that solidified in my mind how great this game was going to be as I moved forward. On the subject of the battle itself, I enjoyed it thoroughly. The speedy combat mechanics ensure you're fast enough to deal with the 2 enemies, even if the camera hampers you. It's one of the more satisfying 2-on-1 battles I've experienced in a game, and it easily claims the number 3 spot. Number 2, Nevin. If it weren't for the main antagonist having so much depth, story significance, and a fantastic evolving battle over the course of the game, Nevin would have taken the number 1 slot with ease. She encapsulates what I believe are Devil May Cry bosses at their best. She has a diverse moveset that becomes more lethal over the course of the battle. These moves have a large differentiation in the dodge types required to keep you on your toes, but are all well balanced by her vocal and visual tells, and she has limited offensive windows that limit your abuse of Devil Trigger. To make her vulnerable, you have to attack to rid herself of the bats she uses to attack. This gives you brief time to unload, and then you repeat the process. Her attacks last longer and become more intense as the battle goes on, and in the final stretch she'll try to suck you off for your life essence. What's really nice is her grateful acceptance of her defeat and willingness to become a tool for your success moving forward. The preceding scene of Dante rocking out with waifu turned guitar is one of the game's silliest moments, and I love every goofy second of it, just like this phenomenal battle. But we can only have a single best boss in Devil May Cry 3.
It looks like we have a winner.
Jackpot.
Number 1, Virgil. In a placement that comes as a surprise to surely no one, Dante's twin brother is a step above all the bosses on today's list, which is no short praise considering how excellent they've been overall. It's just not fair. This game centers around Lady's conflict with Arkham and Dante's conflict with Virgil. While Lady and Arkham are a nice side piece, Virgil makes for a more than worthy main squeeze. Even before the battle begins, you've spent 7 missions climbing the tower, and the final moments before ascending to duel your brother sets the perfect tone. Your first fight in Mission 7 stands up as one of the hardest in the game, surpassed only by later fights with Virgil. He focuses all of his attacks around his katana, and they come in with a speed that I wasn't at all prepared for. However, even though his blows are lightning fast, he'll often stop afterward to sheath his katana, a great little piece of design that gives you an opportunity for your own offense between all the craziness. The second battle has Virgil using the Beowulf weapon to bounce around and unleash more up-close and personal combos. The biggest difference, however, is Virgil's ability to use Devil Trigger. He gets every benefit you do in it. More damage, faster speed, crazier attacks, and health regeneration. The final of which forces you to be aggressive during a dangerous time or risk Virgil gaining back a ton of health. The battle back and forth between using Devil Trigger to your advantage and limiting Virgil's, all while trying to handle his already deadly strikes in his standard mode, make for one of the more intense battles in recent memory. That is until you get to the final encounter. Everything in this game has been pushing toward this moment. Virgil wants to use the pendants to gain the full power of Sparto, while Dante decides to stand in his brother's way. With the conflict of interest and Arkham squashed, all that remains is for the final showdown. Both of the previous battles are like child's play in comparison. While he may have lost the Beowulf to you in a previous skirmish, his katana combos are back and more deadly than ever. His combos grow to 4 to 5 blows and include aerial slams, he teleports more, his DT is more threatening, he has ranged attacks that can melt you if they're not handled well, the list seems to go on and on and on. His walk toward me exerts this pressure that makes me nervous that few bosses can ever impose. The preceding minutes are a blissful hell of ferocious attacks that require some serious jumps in your skill. While Devil May Cry 3 was a challenging game, Virgil's final battle is in a league of its own. You need cat-like reflexes to be able to avoid damage here. I fought him 5 times before I was finally able to overcome him, and I still had to use a single yellow orb near the bottom of his health pool. With what this fight expects from the player, you would think that it would be too much. It's pretty similar to Orphan of Kos. He's a boss battle in a fast game on another level of speed, he throws in longer combos, more teleporting, a better reach on some combos, more Devil Trigger, more ranged attacks, more everything. It's a lot to deal with, but it is possible. Every time I fought him, I could tell I was getting better and better. It's one of those fights that is more rewarding every time you play, and it's far and away the best boss in Devil May Cry 3, which isn't a slight against the others, it's telling of how truly marvelous Virgil is. In the end, he decides to plunge himself down to the demon world, leaving Dante to mourn the loss of his brother, leading to the first time in this series that a devil may cry.
Are you crying?
It's only the rain.
The rain already stopped.
Don't feel bad, Dante, the quality of the bosses are enough to bring me to tears as well. How about all of you? Who are your favorite and least favorite bosses in Devil May Cry 3? We've got one final game to go before the launch of Devil May Cry 5, so be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all the latest content from the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like. It means a lot to me to know you're enjoying the content. I want to thank you all for watching today, much love to you, and I'll see you in the next video.